What's up everybody, George back again with Warp Charge Gaming, and I'm here today to show you a video on Warhammer Underworlds Online. I started playing Warhammer Underworlds back when it was Shadespire and played it for quite a bit of time competitively until about Kill Team came out, and I got pretty enthralled with that. I'm excited to be able to play it again now remotely with people all over the world and not be restricted by who can play and when. And I gotta say they did a good job at porting over the physical game into the digital scape. There's some things about the game that could be improved. Currently it is in its early access stage, and there's plenty of updates to be promised and more factions and more cards and things of that nature. But it is really fun to get to play it at its baseline and grow with the cards as they get integrated into the game. I'm hoping that they improve some of the mechanics of the game, but I'm gonna give you a brief showdown of how this game works and how its online platform operates, and then I'll start to stream some battles here as we go along, and especially while we're in this lockdown state in this day and age we are in. So I hope you stay safe out there, play some Warhammer Underworlds, maybe get some games on. All right, so you're looking at Warhammer Underworlds. I'm up in here. You get it off of Steam. I think it was 30 bucks, and you will have to do in-app purchases for additional factions outside of what they provide. Of course, they're gonna have, you know, I don't know everything they're gonna do. It's early access, things are gonna come. So let's hit begin. So they start you out with your 4 starter decks, and they've now added Farstriders into the mix here as well. If you're familiar with the factions inside of Underworlds, I'm not going to go too in depth. You can basically teach yourself how to play this game inside the glossary section, where it takes you through all the steps of the game. Insert quick disclaimer. I rambled a lot in this video. For the next 3 minutes and 30 seconds, I'm going to be giving some basic overview of how to play. If you already know how to play, skip ahead. Then 15 minutes after that, I'm going to be talking about deck building and some strategy that goes into that. And then if you just want to see what this game looks like and just, you know, see that first and then go back and watch all the rest of it, the last 10 minutes of the video is actual gameplay footage. Again, speaking tactically while I show the game. So I hope you enjoy it. Skip ahead if you need to. Thanks. It is on a custom D6 system. Where you have the symbols that you see here. You have attack dice and you have defender dice. You will see there's 2 hammers, 1 sword, and then 1 of each of these other types. This is basically, the exclamation point is a critical. The hammers, there are more of them on the D6, so a higher average of being successful. And then the daggers or swords are another style of weapon you may be trying to hit with a lesser chance. This is if you have 1 supporting fighter. This is if you have 2 supporting fighters going against the enemy. The enemy will roll defender dice. Just like the attack dice, the defense dice are on a D6 of their own. You have the critical again, and then just like the hammers, you have shields, which have a higher average of being gotten if you have shields. You have the dodge symbol here, which is less armored foes are gonna have, and then you have the half support and the double support. So if we look at, let's say our fighters real quick, we can see that this is the range of movement that they have, 3 hexes. This is the type of defense they have. This model uses the shields, which has the higher average on the defense dice, 2 versus just 1. So if I roll shields or crits, that's gonna help defend against the attacks of my opponents, where Riptooth here has the dodge symbol and has a less likely chance to be able to dodge an attack. Now, what you do have though is that every different fighter in the game has a way that they can inspire, and this is unique to the faction. For the Magor's Fiends, they inspire once they've done damage to somebody. Once the Riptooth inspires here, you flip his card over, and now he has a 5 movement instead of a 4 movement, and he gets to roll 2 dice on when he makes a defense roll, trying to land those dodges and crits. When your opponent attacks, for instance, Riptooth here has his claws and teeth. They have a range of 1. He rolls 3 dice looking for swords, and it does 3 damage. On crits, it does cleave, which means it ignores the shield type of defense. When I roll, I'm gonna roll 3 dice, and I'm looking for these daggers, or I'm looking for the crit. If I roll a crit, basically every success that I roll needs to be matched by success for my opponent. If I roll all daggers, 3 successful hits, if he rolls 1 crit, it ignores all my successes. If I roll a crit, let's say he gets 2 defense dice, and I roll a crit and a successful dagger hit, he would have to match that with a crit and a successful shield or dodge symbol, depending on what his defense type is, in order not to suffer any damage. And no matter how many hits you get through, it's only increasing the likelihood that you do hit. It's not increasing the amount of damage you do. So if I get 3 hits through and I'm overall successful, you fail to dodge those attacks, you're only gonna take the damage of the weapon profile, not multiple times. So if I get 3 successful hits with his claws, but you block, 1 of them and take 2, you're only taking 3 damage. It just means I successfully hit you and you take the damage of what the weapon is that I was using, in this case 3. Now, by using the upgrades and the ploys, I can make that be additional damage, have additional attack dice, or I can upgrade them with an additional weapon, and I choose which weapon I use when I go to fight. It walks you through every element of the game in here in the glossary, but there also is a good walkthrough tutorial. So it has a great deck editor. I'll go ahead and create a new one. For example, you choose your faction. I like Khorne, and then create. You're able to name it what you want here in the top right. And here on the right, they're gonna basically start you out with a starter deck. I'm just gonna clear all these out real quick. So you have, in your deck building process, you have 4 categories. You have your fighters themselves, which are gonna be defaulted, there's no changing that. And then you're gonna have the objectives, the ploys, and the upgrades. The objectives are probably the most critical element of your deck because it is gonna be based around your play style and as well as what you're gonna bring for ploys and upgrades to help you achieve accomplishing these objectives. This is a game that is won off of points or glory, as they call them. So we're gonna hit the objective tab up here in the top and look at all the objectives that are available to us. In the top right of these cards, you can see this faction symbol, and that's showing you these are faction specific to the Magor's Fiends, while this symbol here is a universal card. You can actually filter that in the top here. I can choose to look at just faction specific objectives, just universal objectives available to us, or both at the same time, which is what I prefer. So now you can see these glory tokens here at the bottom of each card, and that's telling you their significance of how much they're worth when you go to score them. You're gonna want to be able to outscore your opponent, and you're gonna wanna be able to score these effectively. So you have to kind of envision in your mind the gameplay of what you're gonna be trying to accomplish. And it's very important to have a good mental image of these cards because you're gonna be having to think about when it's important to try to draw for them or discard and draw for them to be able to accomplish your goals when you have none other that you could do. So when I walk through these, I read them all individually and start to make decisions. You're definitely gonna want some heavy hitters that are the 2s and 3s, and you're gonna wanna pay attention to the ones that are scored immediately or scored at the end of a phase or scored at the end of the game. You don't want too many that are scored at the end of the game because if you draw those early on in the game, you're gonna have to continue to hold on to those cards and not be able to draw your other objectives waiting to score that at the end. And if you're not careful, it could be stolen from you and you held a card the whole game for no reason. Besides score immediately cards, which are usually goal-oriented, kill-related, or do this and get that, there's gonna be objectives that are reliant on scoring objectives themselves. You're gonna always place in each game 5 objectives on the game board going back and forth between the players. One player will get to put down 3 objectives, the other will put down 2. And some armies are better at positional scoring than others. The more you know the game and what kind of ploys are out there and what people are capable of doing in the game, the more you start to think about how capable are you going to be to score these objectives. For instance, there's a push mechanic in the game where someone can play a card and push your model off an objective. Once you move a model in this game, let's say move to an objective, you're not going to be able to move them again for that turn without playing a special card that allows them to do so. So once a player knocks you off an objective that you went to go capture, you may not have another way to get that. And these can be kind of difficult, but they can be very rewarding. You have the single point scores where you get 1 glory each, or you have some where if you score 3 objectives that by the end of the turn, you can get a big fat 3. But again, that can be difficult as you'll see throughout the gameplay. Now, the important note here about objectives is that you only get 12 of them. You can see that on the right side where it says 0 to 12 here. You're only going to get to pick 12. So you're really going to have to think about what is the most likely to be achieved. And if you were to pick just positional scoring objectives, they could be taking up slots for objectives that are more potent to be able to grab. Let's say you said control objective 5, but your opponent places objective 5 in a location that's nearly impossible for or undesirable for your models to ever want to go there. You now have a card in your deck that's totally useless. So you try to pick objectives that are going to always be relevant and not easy for for your opponent to take away. Some of the objectives are specific amongst your different models, like only your leader can accomplish this, or only this model can accomplish this. You have to think about if that model dies, you're not going to be able to achieve it. At the start of each turn, you're going to draw 3 objectives. Throughout that turn, you're going to have 4 activations to accomplish those given objectives. In those 4 activations, you're either going to move and fight, or you have the option to discard and draw an objective. You want to do that as little as possible, and you want every objective you draw to be as scoreable as possible from that one singular draw. You especially have to think about your first hand draw, and you want to have the opportunity with inside your objective build to that when you draw your first 3 objectives, you're going to at least be able to score 2 out of the 3. When you do draw your first 3, if they do not look scoreable for some given reason, then you're definitely going to want to discard and hope to draw 3 newer ones that are going to fit that goal of getting at least 2 off the bat. The reason that the glory is important beyond just winning the game is that you cannot use any upgrades unless you have glory to spend on the upgrades. Now, when you spend the glory on the upgrades, you don't lose that for your in-game points. It's just your currency throughout the game to actually pay for these upgraded features like +1 damage, further movement, more wounds. These characteristics you want to add to your character's profile, you're going to have to pay for with glory. So you get that by either killing a model or by scoring these cards. So you're going to want to kind of do both, kill stuff and get these cards. Some people are going to play totally turtle style where they don't try to fight anybody at all. There is objectives you can choose that are all about non-engagement. So that is based on your play style about how much you want to be a hybrid between killing positionals and non-engagement style objectives. Okay, so you pick your 12 objectives out, and then you're going to pick your ploys and your upgrades that support you achieving those. So let's look at this. So here's honest opponent. Score this in the end phase if you played no ploys during the preceding action phase. So that means you didn't play any of these action cards in a turn. That is a pretty, you usually are going to want to do that, right? You're going to usually want to play these cards, and it would be a pretty non-engaging style army build that you would choose to bring this card with you. Here's Geared for War. Score this in the end phase if each of your surviving fighters have at least 3 upgrades. So that means you'd have to buy 3 upgrades or more, depending on how many models are in your army, and each one of them would have to have an upgrade to score this point. That means that you're going to have enough glory to buy those upgrades to get one on every one of your models. So let's say you drew this as your first turn draw. It's unlikely that by the end of the turn you're going to gain enough glory to be able to put artifacts on every single one of your models. Not to mention you'd have to draw enough artifacts or upgrades to be able to put on your guys in the first place. So this is one that's not always going to be easy. Something, you know, that's to be considered. Here's another one that's not a great card in my opinion. Score this in the end phase if your opponent played no power cards. Easily taken from you. You have to hope you're going to draw this card and you're going to hold on to it, hoping they don't spend any of their objective cards, or their ploys or upgrades. That's next to very unlikely to happen. Here's one that I have in my deck that you have to know is in your deck, have that mental vision, and when you're placing the objectives down before the game begins, be thinking about this card. Plant a Standard. Score this in the end phase if your leader is holding an objective in the enemy territory. This is an easy card to grab on the first turn, to be able to just move your leader to an objective in the enemy territory. As long as you stay there by the end of that turn, you're going to score this on the first turn and get some glory. Again, there's ways they're going to knock you off the objective, and there's tricky ways that you can make it your last action to go jump on that objective, for instance. Maybe make some distractions to where they don't even try to knock you off the objective. They don't necessarily know you're going to be trying to score this anyways. These are secret to you until you reveal them by scoring them. But again, a card that if your leader's taken out, you're not going to be able to score this one at all if you draw it in later turns in the game. So it's this type of thing that scores on a model specific mechanic. You want to be careful about having too many of because you don't want to have cards that are not worth using. For instance, here's one of those disregard or non-engagement, bloodless. You score this at the end of the phase of no fighter, my fighters or your fighters, killed anything, or I'm sorry, took any wounds. So, you know, this would be an army that doesn't want to fight. That's not how I would play, so I don't put that in the deck. Ploy Master, that's one that I usually score pretty often. I go heavy on the amount of ploys that are in the deck. I use my discard and draw mechanic to try to get enough to accomplish this, but you can score this if you play 3 ploys in a given turn. Just like you draw 3 objectives at the start of each turn, you draw up to 5 cards at the start of each turn. So hopefully out of those 5 cards, you're gonna have 3 ploys that you can play to be able to accomplish the objective. I've found that every time I've drawn this card, for the majority of times, 90% of the time, I'm able to score that thing. Advancing Strike, kill a fighter in the enemy deployment phase, deployment zone. That is pretty easy to accomplish on the first turn. These are the questions you're asking yourself. Now, if you start to get a whole bunch of, not only are you trying to be careful in the balance of positional scoring or the balance of model-specific scoring or end-of-the-game scoring, because again, if you draw an end-of-the-game card early, you're gonna have to hold on to it if you wanna try to score it at the end. You have to be careful with single-point glory objectives. If your opponent doesn't take a lot of single glory objectives and they only take the big swinging 2 and 3 point glory objectives, you're not going to see them scoring, and you're not going to really have a gauge of what they're going to be getting, and then they're going to dump a bunch of points on you at once, and you're only going to have these little single cards to try to be able to achieve. You only have 4 actions over 3 turns, so 12 total actions to be able to get as many glory as you can via kills and objectives. So if every action you scored 1 glory, by just being the totally most optimum you could be by accomplishing each one of, you have 12 actions, 12 objectives, let's say you accomplish them all, well, if they're only worth 1 point apiece and your opponent does the same thing and he has several that are worth 2 and 3, you've lost. So you have to be careful with the balance of of having some high scoring objectives that are still achievable when you draw them. All right, so that's objectives. That is probably the most important foundation to how you build your deck. You're gonna have universal cards and you're gonna have faction-specific cards. You definitely want to, the faction-specific cards are usually, there's what's unique to you and kind of the X factor of you playing that faction, and they're usually gonna be pretty achievable by the faction as they're oriented around the goals of what that faction already tries to accomplish. All right, so now you have to on minimum have 20 ploys and upgrades, okay? Now, you can have as many upgrades as you want, but you can't have any more ploys than you have upgrades. Now, what you'll find when you go to the ploys here is that a lot of these are very good. They let you do things that kind of break the game, the basic game mechanics, where usually, you know, once you move, you can't move again, or once you charge, you won't be able to activate that model again. These will give you ways to do those things even after you normally wouldn't be able to. For instance, here's Sidestep, where you could look like you've moved the max distance your model's able to go, or your opponent's calculating how far your models are able to move, and they're making their moves adjusted accordingly to that. But all of a sudden you pull a trick up your sleeve and you're able to move an additional hex that you wouldn't have been able to before without this card. Here's the ability to re-roll any of your attack dice. Here's the ability to make all your enemies' move actions only count for 1 distance on their given turn. Here's the Mighty Swing, the ability to swing on multiple targets instead of just 1. There's a lot of powerful attack actions in here, move mechanics or maneuverability ploys. There's there's bonuses to drawing cards and to getting to fight when you die, doing extra damage, laying traps, things of that nature. And these are all very powerful, and you're gonna wanna think about the way you're gonna be trying to achieve these objectives. If you have very killing-oriented objectives, you're gonna wanna increase your killing output by giving yourself rerolls, additional attack dice, more damage, things of that nature, and you're gonna choose those kind of ploys. If you're looking for ways to score objectives, you're gonna choose ones that give you extra movements, swapping models around, and getting to swap objectives, move objectives, things like that. And then if you're a slow army, you're going to take a lot of the movement-oriented ploys, things that give you plus movement for a turn or things of that nature. Same with the upgrades. You're going to choose upgrades that help you move or fight or get into position. The thing is, again, is that these ploys are all very good for the most part, and you're going to want to use them a lot. And the upgrades are not as desirable, and you're going to find yourself having to say, I guess I'll take this one, just so that you can take that extra ploy. So that's the balancing act. I think it's a max deck of 30. I could be wrong, there might not be a max there, but again, no more. You're definitely going to not reach a threshold of upgrades where you don't want to take anymore because the rest are going to be not so good for you, and it's going to be balancing about what ploys can you live or not live without. Now, the other interesting thing is you can only take one of each card, so there's no way to take multiples of any given thing and stack up on something. So go ahead and get that out of your mind. In the upgrade section, the ploys are a little bit easier to just go crazy with, and you're gonna find, yeah, I want that, I want that, I want that. I usually end up with decks of 15 to 16 ploys, and I can usually, for my given faction, find upgrades to support taking those ploys and not care so much. And again, by using the discard mechanic and draw mechanic, you can usually get the cards you need and not be overwhelmed with unwanted cards. But the thing you want to be careful of inside the upgrade world is to not get too many upgrades that are model specific. And if they are model specific, that at least they can apply to multiple models that you are bringing in your army. For instance, this one only is restricted to Magor, and this one is only to Zarkus. So, you know, if you, for instance, these guys die, then now I've just drawn a card that I can't play at all and is totally useless to me. So that's where you want to be careful. I enjoy the different elements that have a chance to act when you die or when someone misses an attack or something like that. Those are fun, but I'm usually playing combat armies, orcs, or Magor's Fiends, and I'm gonna add mechanics that give me more damage, more swings, and things like that. Usually for slower armies, movement ones are usually what you head to next. I try to be careful with the special weapons. Usually armies that don't have much punch are gonna take stuff like this. Multi-damage is extremely powerful in this game, and you're gonna wanna be able to drop 3 and 4 wounds, particularly 3 wounds. That's that magic number that you're trying to hit, because usually things take more than 2 damage to bring down, and 3 is that magic number. So I'm usually, if I'm gonna take a weapon that I'm gonna use to fight with versus the default weapon of my fighter, then I'm going to pick one that does a lot of damage. I particularly like this demonic weapon. You take a wound every time you use it, but it gets 2 swings with hammers, the higher average weapon choice, and it does 3 damage. So I guess to show that, the first icon on the upgrade here is the distance of the weapon is able to do. So this fights to an adjacent hex, 1 hex away, and it gets to roll 2 dice looking for the hammer symbol. It does 3 damage. Whenever you attack someone, you roll the amount of dice you have for your attack profile. In this case, this guy would have 2, and the other person would roll the amount of defense that their defense profile goes to. Yeah, so from there, you get yourself a minimum 10 upgrades, 10 ploys that are again built around trying to achieve the objectives that you've thought about as you go to choose, and you're ready to play. I myself bring a lot more ploys than that. I'll bring at least 14 to 16 ploys, and I'll bring that many upgrades to match because you have to. Once you've done that, you can hit save, and your deck is ready to go. I've been very successful with my Magor's Fiend deck. I will do a quick example in a bot match here. We'll do a mirror match. All right, so here we go versus the opponent. There's a roll off. If I won the roll off, then the enemy's gonna choose his board. So he's sitting there selecting between the different boards that he's gonna use. And he chose this Shaishin Star Dial board. So now I know that I'm gonna get to pick a board that I prefer and arrange how his board is oriented. I'm looking at the fact he's Magor's Fiend, I'm Magor's Fiend, we're just gonna have a bloodbath and I wanna slam into each other as fast as possible. I'm gonna choose this board here. I wanna choose one that has the most guys on the front line as possible. The Shattered Tower has 2 on the front line, 2 just on 1 hex back. So I'll choose that. And then I wanna try to get all 4 of his models accessible out the gates. In this current formation, it's not. So I'm gonna drag it up, and then I'm gonna flip my board. And then you can even orient, as long as there's at least 3 hexes, or 2 if you're going on the short edge here, able to be in the no man's land. So I'm gonna orient so that my 4 guys are facing down his 4 guys as best I can. Confirm. Now the board is ready to go when we set objectives. like I said, I have that objective where I want my leader to be able to score a objective in the enemy deployment zone. So I'm going to start out by putting an objective right in that location. Now I have 2 of my starting hexes, which are these indicators here, that are going to be able to move to that location for my leader. This is the no man's land. I would not get that objective plant a standard for my leader scoring in the enemy deployment zone by putting it in the no man's zone, no man's land. So I'm going to put another one. Now all the objectives have to be 2 hexes away from another. So based on the way that he put these 2 objectives down, I do not have a location to put another one in the enemy deployment zone. That's why I started out getting that knocked out right away, so he couldn't block that out. So just to avoid him scoring, I don't care. My deck is not built around scoring the objectives other than getting the one in the enemy deployment zone. So I put the other one just wherever. The very final objective, when you're placing those objectives down, none can be on the edge hexes of the board except for the final objective place. So to start it out, I'm going to look at my top hand here and see if this is something that I want for my starting hand. Now, like I said, I'm trying to get 2 of these in order for it to be a good hand. We see we got plant a standard. I've already set myself up to score that objective by putting my leader on the enemy territory objective. So that is scoreable. I have ploy master. That means that I need to have 3 ploys over here that are represented by the dagger symbol in the top left for this to be achievable. Since I do, I now have 2 objectives that are scoreable. One is a big scorer that is available to be scored in the end of the game. So I'll have to hold on this every turn and not be able to have those to be able to score if I want to be able to achieve this. Another thing to note is that none of these are score instantly. If I were to immediately be able to score these, then that would mean that I get to score the card and then draw a new card. So that means for this turn, I'm going to be stuck with these 3 cards unless I draw and discard. So I'm going to choose to go for it. And then because I have 3 ploys here, I'm not going to choose to redraw my hand either. And I'm going to pass on the mulligan. I like my first draw. We roll. The person with the most crits gets the choice of who's going to have the first deploying model. We have the same amount of models, so I want to deploy first because the person who finishes deploying first is going to get an extra dice to be rolled when choosing the priority for turn. So because we have the same amount, I'm going to choose to go first. I know that my leader wants to go score this. I don't want to make that extremely apparent to my opponent immediately. Here's that dead man's zone where I need to get across. So I may not put my leader down right away in one of these hexes just to show him that I'm going to be trying to achieve that. So I'll take somebody I care less about. And I know that I care less about 2 of my fighters over the other 2 fighters because one, I know that the dog and Magor, when they're inspired, can do 3 damage. These other 2 characters can never get to 3 damage without being upgraded or using ploys on. So they're less valuable to me than these. Also, Riptooth is able to move 4 out the gate, while everyone else in my army is only able to move 3 until inspired. So this is what I need to think about when I'm setting up and thinking about my steps ahead. I also know that when Riptide gets inspired, he moves 5 and he gets 2 defense dice. So he becomes that much more survivable once his job is done. Now, Magor is slower, so if I put him over here, he's going to have a limited option of what he's able to attack. Well, if I put him in the middle, he moves 3, I can go 1, 2, 3, and know I can fight here, here, or here. So I have more options with Magor in this location. So I'm going to still keep that a secret from where he's going to go. I'm going to put my Riptooth down, who has a movement of 4 and a lot more accessible to these further away targets. Now we'll throw down Magor. He's throw down his army in the way he would like to do it. And now we're gonna roll. There's my extra attack dice. That got me the win for the choice of turn. We're gonna go ahead and be aggressive and take the turn, all right? So now we're ready to go. We know we want to do some damage to get inspired. We know we're gonna wanna end up on this objective. And I know that he is a combat-oriented army and gonna move towards me to try to fight me. Getting these ploys off is important. Whoever chooses first, the negative is they can't fire their ploys until after their first action. So I'm gonna take a kind of a nobody here, and I'm gonna go ahead and run up and smack his guy. This is where I choose my weapon. I have one weapon that can attack multiple targets, or it's a special ability weapon, or I can use the one that has 2 attacks, looking for hammers, that does 2 damage. That's my better weapon right now. I've chosen that to be selected, go and fight. I get a crit and a hammer. That's a success and a hammer. He got a shield, which is a successful defense, but my crit overrides that and gets by him. So he takes 2 damage, and now I'm able to drive him back if I desire. I don't want to drive him back to this objective because then I can't move to it myself, and I don't really want to move him closer to me because then he doesn't have to do a move and attack action. He can just do an attack action. Whenever you do a move and an attack, it's considered a charge, and now I'm not going to be able to activate this model again. If I set him right next to my model adjacent there, he'll be able to fight, and because he didn't move and fight, he'll be able to continue to still have a move or move and fight, or just fight again over and over option with this model. So I'm gonna just not move him at all, which is by me being adjacent to his model, he still just can fight me, but my next attack is gonna have support for me having a model adjacent to his fighter there. Now, even though I'm in harm's way, I do have a ploy here, and I need to play 3 of them to get Ploy Master to say that the next activation that the next one of my friendly fighters that suffers damage is only gonna suffer 1 despite whatever they output. So I'm gonna go ahead and throw that up and minimize the amount of damage I'm gonna be able to take for throwing him in the front line. Looks like he's playing into my hands. He just played in a card that gives him extra attacks, which is now less good for the fact that it's only going to do 1 damage no matter how many times he hits me. So I've said I'm good. I don't need to play any more cards. I passed it to him. He passed it back. That starts his activation. He does successfully hit me and drives me back, getting me away from being on a support against that fighter. But he only caused 1 damage. And look, he played the same card. So now I'm only going to be able to do 1 damage. There's no way I can get a killing blow because my models do 2 damage and could wipe the Zarkus out here. But he set me up to only be able to do a minimum of 1. So for that means that my attack is going to be a lot less potent on this round, and I'm just going to go ahead and pass on playing any of my cards that can make me more effective in combat, being that he's going to only do 1 damage no matter what. So here we are. I could draw a new power card. I could get rid of a card and draw another as my second activation for the first round here, but I only have 4 and I want to get some damage done and cross the line. So I'm going to take another do nothing and I'm going to go smack this guy, this time using the support of Zarkus to help out and give me a better opportunity to hit. So we're going to go spread the love around and go try to do a single damage to this guy because of his what he did. And I drew 2 daggers. My attack is on hammer, so I missed in that case. He also did not successfully, there was nothing to defend there. I'm going to pass. There's nothing I want to add benefit to his turn or make his turn less good. He swings back and misses both times. My special ability is that when a fighter misses against me, I get a free attack, so I'm going to take that free attack. It is only 1 swing, doing 1 damage, looking for daggers, so it's not that great. I do get daggers. He only gets a half support and he has none of the support, so I do end up doing a single damage to him. And I am going to leave him right here so he's still accessible for my leader to go smack, or now my dog can go smack him down. Okay, so now that he's gone, it is my turn again, and maybe I do want to play upgrades that is going to help support my next attack. This mighty swing will let me, where I usually can only fight against 1 attacker, I'm now going to be able to fight against 2 different models, or as many models that are adjacent to the hex I'm in. So I'm going to fire off mighty swing. Again, I need to fire off 3 ploys anyways in order to be able to get Ploy Master here. Now I'm going to try to go ahead and set myself up to get plant a standard. I'm going to try to knock these guys back and go get my hero onto the objective here. So let us do that. We're going to select Magor. We're going to get our leader onto the objective in the enemy deployment zone, and we're going to select to fight. Now you can see the circle appears because we have Mighty Swing set up. We're going to choose the weapon, and if we successfully hit this guy, he's going to 2 damage and die. So we'll choose our fighter. We get a hammer. He does not, oh, he is supported, so I did not successfully kill him. Because I missed my attack, he got a free fight back. Now I'm swinging against the dog. I get a crit and a hammer, successfully hit the dog for 2 damage, and I'm gonna knock him back. So I am on the objective. I did not get the kill, unfortunately, but I did get to swing against 2 targets and put some damage into the hound. All right, so it's back to him, his 3rd activation of the first round. He swings again. Again, he's just getting to swing over and over again there because he has not charged or anything. He missed though, so I get another free attack. We get 2 misses, he gets a miss, nothing happens. All right, so here's our 4th activation. We really need to play a card here to get Ploy Master. I didn't read it in full. This card is only active as a reaction whenever I kill a model with an upgrade. So that means that there's no way, unless I kill the model with an upgrade, that I'm gonna be able to achieve Ploy Master, and that was the mistake I did by going too fast. All right, guys, so I'm gonna cut it there. I actually was talking to nobody as my mic ran out of battery. So anyways, that is how the game is played. You saw 4 actions in a given turn. You have 4 actions per turn with a 3-turn game. So between you and your opponent, that'll be 8 total actions, 4 for you, 4 for them. After each action is when you're going to do a power step where you each will play ploys and upgrades back and forth until both players have passed to one another, and then the next person's action will occur. Once all of those 4 given actions per player have happened, in a turn will be the end phase where you score all of your objectives, do a final upgrade to your models for what you can buy with those new glory points you earn from the objectives, and then you do the discard of drawing back up to 3 objectives and discard and draw back up to 5 power cards. So it's fast paced, 3 turns long, and then you were definitely rewarded for having a good sense of purpose and intention that you build around the objectives that are in your deck. I hope that this video helped you get acquainted with the game if you weren't familiar already, or rejuiced your mind to jump back in. It's a lot of fun to be able to play on Steam there, so I hope to get to play you, maybe do some streams, or if anything, you found a way to enjoy yourself while we're kind of stuck at home more than we might like to be. So I appreciate you guys, and thank you for your support. Thanks for watching. I hope you keep tuned in for more. Keep taking fun seriously, and see you soon. Peace.